All right, let's talk about what the blockchain is, right? You guys have probably heard of cryptocurrency or Bitcoin or blockchain technology, all these buzzwords, right? But no one really knows kind of why blockchain is important. They know they can make a lot of money, but they don't exactly know why it's such a revolutionary new asset class. So I'm going to break it down for you guys as simple as I can. And if you guys have any questions at the end, just leave them down in the comments. So the first thing you might have to understand before we get into what the blockchain is how our money has evolved over time. All right, so in the beginning, we started off trading goods and services, right? If let's say you were a hairdresser and I was a plumber, right? You would trade me a haircut for, me fixing your toilet or something like that, right? Or something of equal value, right? We wouldn't exactly know what that exchange would look like, but we know that we're trying to trade something equally for another goods and service. So the only problem with the barter system was that everyone kind of values things differently, right? Something that I would find valuable may not be as valuable to another person, right? And it's all, based on your circumstances and your perception. But basically, sometimes you'd be trading stuff that aren't exactly equal in both people's eyes. So then we kind of moved on to trading precious metals, right? In the age of bimetallism, we traded gold and silver, and that was kind of our medium of exchange, right? An ounce of gold or an ounce of silver, it would basically be the same value as anywhere else in the world, right? It didn't really have borders, but the only problem was that it had a big problem of transportability, right? You couldn't carry around, let's say, you had 20 pounds of gold. You couldn't carry around 20 pounds of gold in order to, use it to trade, right? That would be cumbersome. You'd be worried about getting robbed all the time. It just wasn't a good solution. So from there, we kind of created banks that would be kind of like the custodians of our wealth, right? So if we wanted to hold gold and silver, the bank would hold it for us. And for an exchange, what the banks did, instead of, having you carry around all this metal, they gave you promissory notes, IOU basically, that basically said if you keep 50 pounds of gold or whatever it is with us, here's a bunch of bills that represent that value that you could use to trade with other people. And basically that was the start of fiat currency, right? And when I say fiat currency, I'm referring to any type of money that was given out by a government central authority, right? Everybody works a job and they get paid in their national currency. So that national currency would be that fiat currency. So over time, we basically, traded with metal, and we also traded with something called a global reserve currency, right? Which was a currency that we would trade between us and we would trust no matter where it came from. And there have been several different types of global reserve currency. Currently, after World War II, the world decided that the United States dollar was going to be the global reserve currency, which means the U.S. dollar would be used to trade for commodities and oil and basically resources. And here's a visual representation of some of the other global reserve currencies and how long they kind of stayed in power. So because after World War II, the global reserve currency was the US dollar, a lot of the global economy used it to trade. And anytime there was a geopolitical tension, they would basically run to the banks to try to trade in their US dollars for gold. Now, because gold is harder to come by than printing, fiat currency, you have to, put in time and effort in order to get it out of the ground, to process it and then distribute it. So there wasn't a big supply of gold back then. And when people were basically running to the banks to get, exchange their dollars for gold, the U.S. faced a big problem, which was basically keeping their gold reserves stocked up. So in order to avoid people, draining the gold reserves, Nixon took the U.S. dollar off of the gold standard, and now the global reserve currency was no longer backed by anything valuable. It was just paper money that could, be printed basically to infinity without actual anything backing it. But to solve kind of that issue, Nixon also sent a diplomat by the name of Henry Kissinger over to Saudi Arabia in order to make a deal. And that deal stated basically that if Saudi Arabia allowed only the trading of oil only in U.S. dollars, then the U.S. would back it in any conflict the Saudis might have. So since that deal, basically, we've had something called the petrodollar, right? Unlike after World War II, where the dollar was backed by gold, we had the dollar now backed by oil. And this allowed the United States to have a little bit more power globally, right? It allowed, because everybody traded in US dollars, it allowed the United States to make foreign policy, basically, that was more beneficial towards them, right? If they didn't like, if a country was doing something that they didn't like, then they could theoretically cut them off from the global financial system, because again, the dollars that are floating around globally are used to trade. So if someone was cut off from using that US dollar, they can no longer get what they need for their country. Now you could see how that's problematic to a lot of countries. They don't want, another country basically having a stranglehold on what they do or do not do. And on top of which, the global reserve currency in the United States faces another problem. It's called the Triffin dilemma, where when there's domestic policy made in the United States, right, for their citizens or whatever it is, maybe the Federal Reserve raised or lowered interest rates, those policies actually affect everyone globally because of the global reserve status of the dollar. So in reality, these changes that the United States makes to their monetary policy affects a lot of people globally, right? And to be fair, it shouldn't happen, because a global reserve currency should be a fair and equal and neutral unit of measure and unit of account, basically, right? Anyone could use it. Doesn't matter what your political stances are. Anyone should theoretically use it. Right? That's why people liked gold, because it didn't have any borders. You could get gold anywhere around the world, really, and everyone knows how much gold there is all the time, and it wouldn't be as easy to make as the U.S. dollar is. So recently, anytime there's a geopolitical tensions or something going on in the world, a lot of people, the governments of the world, they tend to print money, right, to support wars or support their citizens or even maybe their allies globally. On top of which, we're not even talking about the subjective budgetary needs of politicians, right? Because the U.S. government could print money. They could print money for whatever reason they feel is necessary. That could lead to a lot of corruption, mismanagement of funds. They could tell you, hey, we're gonna take your taxes and put it towards building better roads, but in reality, they're sending it overseas for some other reason. And this is actually getting kind of worse now, because now we're no longer physically printing, money really. We could actually just digitally print money if we wanted to. So we could literally press a button and print more money. And banks do this all the time, right? Anytime you put money into a bank, what they do, because of fractional reserve banking, is they take a portion of what you've deposited and they keep it for you to access, and then the other portion would be lent out, right? So let's say you have $10,000, they would save $2,000 or $1,000, whatever they're required to, and they will lend out the rest of your balance, right? And it's not like they're gonna take it from your account, right? What they do is they actually digitally print it on top of the existing money supply, further devaluating the current money supply. So this is kind of why inflation happens, is because costs of things are continuously kind of going up, right? You think like, oh, things are just getting more expensive. No, it's because the money that we're using is just getting less and less valuable, so you have to use more of it in order to pay for stuff. That's why a loaf of bread used to cost, like 10 cents, and now it costs like $5. But digital money could also be used for good things as well. Because of all this money printing, especially because of the 2008 financial crisis, in 2009, Bitcoin was created, and it was the first cryptocurrency that ran on a brand new technology called the blockchain. And we're going to talk a little bit more about this in part two of this video. So make sure to like and follow for more.